the culmination of a 3-year journey. I was bullied as a kid, and as a filmmaker, I think you try and find stories that you can connect with, because it's a long haul to make a film, and I think it's, when you can connect and do something that's really personal and meaningful, it matters so much. And for me, I think I wanted to make a film that gave a voice to in a way, bullying sort of exists sometimes in this construct that's very hard to define. What is bullying? What is, and it's often met with a response that can be minimizing, which is kids will be kids, and this is a rite of passage. And so I thought, first and foremost, I wanted to try and just show it, and really let people walk in these shoes and experience it, and then hopefully allow for the kinds of, this is exactly what I dreamed of when we started this movie, that we would be sitting and I would have an audience with the Minister of Education and youth leaders and educators, and this is exactly what I dreamed of. And so here we go, the conversation begins.
One thing I think I want to address right away is does this exist to this extent in Canada? This is an American film, obviously.
We have taken a number of steps, and I think we have educators in our schools who will respond. But have I met with families in Ontario who have lost a child? Yes, I have. Have I met with families whose stories are as heartbreaking as this? Yes. So we've made progress. We have more progress to make. I think we're educating our educators to find that teachable moment in a hallway, and instead of letting it go by, say, Johnny, what just happened there? Don't you think that might... We need to teach our educators how to respond, and that's part of the work that we're doing, for example, bringing in a number of experts to help us look at the Ontario curriculum, to take it to the next step, to say, how do you teach our educators, our principals, ourselves, our bus drivers? Everybody has a role to play. The parents, from the time a child steps on the bus, when I put my 2 boys on the bus, I expect them to be safe on that bus. That's the beginning of the school day, and that's what we intend to deliver in Ontario. Right. But is it always easy? No, of course it's not. And we have some very tragic stories in the province, and we also have a number of other issues that we're tackling head on as well, in terms of students who are GLBTQ students in our schools who say, there are still issues, and we look to make that better.
Because I think for us, it's about, so the moment for me is when, there are 2 actually. One is where she says, I've been on that bus, it's safe. But I think my all-time moment in the movie is when the vice principal wants them to shake hands, right? And I think it's easy to vilify, right? But I also know that it's about the tools that educators need to know what to do in that moment. I don't think there was a malicious intent in either of those moments. I think there was a lack of knowing the tools. I think that there was a lack of knowing how to facilitate those conversations and how to build a school from the ground up where where it doesn't happen. So that for me is the moment. That for me as an educator, I wanted to scream. and that's on a good day.
The audience may have joined you.
Yeah.
What was it like seeing those moments unfold?
Look, this was a very challenging film to make. And I suppose for me, I find myself in this situation a lot where those scenes come up. And I spend a lot of time being really defensive for the school in this movie, and it often is very unsatisfying for audiences. But to me, what's really important is that as this film rolls out, that educators are our partners, that schools are our partners, that government agencies feel like they can partner with us. It's like such a critical piece of creating change. And as much as that administrator, clearly, totally got it wrong in that moment, I recognize it in the context of, as the filmmaker, this school district let us make this movie. And 99% of districts, and I would imagine it's probably the same here, would say no. You can't, like, we don't have a bullying problem, and if we do, you're certainly not going to film it. And so, for me, the conversation that we've had in Sioux City is as relevant as the conversation that we've had anywhere else. And when we screened this film in Sioux City, we had a free community screening. 1,600 people from the community came, including all of the teachers, district personnel, the school board, and Kim Lockwood herself. And, you know, and she stood in front of her community and she apologized and she said, I got it wrong and I failed that student and I don't have the resources and training that I need to be effective at my job. And I think that's an incredibly honest and powerful admission. And I think that, so for me, each time we have this opportunity to gather and convene, whether it's a conversation about professional development, whether it's a conversation about youth leadership, whether it's a conversation about partnership and study guides and how to sort of amplify this message, whether it's a conversation about having support services available to kids that see this film, everything is part of this conversation, including being respectful of educators, and in particular the educator in this film.
The MPAA chose to give this an R rating in the US, and maybe you can tell the complete story, Lee.
Well, I've definitely had a crash course in the MPAA over the last 5 weeks. You know, it's funny because when we made the film, I never in a million years thought we would get an R rating. I mean, at the same time, I never thought we'd have this kind of opportunity with having powerful and smart and passionate distribution, and you know, it's been an incredible ride. But you know, as you're making a movie, you don't even think about it. And even until like beyond our premiere, I still hadn't thought about the rating. And then it sort of came up that we might get an R because of language, and I was like, this is insane. And in fact, we got the R, and we challenged it. We had an appeal process. Oh, this is great because this actually gives me an opportunity to talk about Alex. So Alex today, I'm so happy to be able to share with you guys, is doing so amazingly well. Like, you wouldn't recognize like the difference. It's like you can't even believe that this is the same kid from 2 years ago. And he flew to Los Angeles and argued against the R rating together with Harvey Weinstein to the MPAA Appeals Board, which is just amazing. Harvey said, Lee, you're going to sit this one out. I need Alex. And he killed it. I mean, we didn't win, but we lost by 1 vote. But he just, you know, he said, he basically in his sort of statement, he said, you know, what you're effectively saying is that I can't see my own life. And, you know, I'm no expert on the MPAA, and there's lots of big issues. But I think that one thing I've realized is that there's a great hypocrisy in allowing films that glorify or even sort of sexify violence to get PG and PG-13 ratings time and time and time and time again. And then for them to bring down the hammer on a film like this on behalf of American family values, to me just seems totally out of whack. And the kids in the film asked us to hold strong and fight this R. An extraordinary young woman, a 17-year-old student from Ann Arbor, Michigan, young lesbian. She just turned 17. She herself was a victim of very serious bullying. Launched a petition on change.org that now I think is at 520,000 signatures. And not just signatures, but people sharing stories and memories and connecting and supporting each other. So in a way, this rating thing has really changed the game for this film. In a way that I'm actually like really happy about, even though we were dealing with this what felt like a very unfair rating. And that's why when I say that like it was really meaningful that Canada gave it a PG and in Quebec a G, it was, of course, right? I did do my first drinking in Montreal. So, look, you know, I can tell you that in the midst of the battle, we would get calls from our team here in Canada, and they would say, "You're not going to believe this, but BC just gave us a PG, and like we would just cheer because it gave us the strength to keep fighting. So, you know, I'm very grateful for their judgment and the process that they, the consideration and thought that they gave to this film. And, you know, we're doing everything that we can to make it relevant and build really powerful partnerships and tools and resources around it, so that when this dream of seeing whole schools sign on to go see this film, that I know it's going to be meaningful, that they're going to, you know, sign a contract that says they're going to use this curriculum, that they're going to engage with youth partnerships, that it's going to be a whole community contract that includes students and teachers and cafeteria staff and bus drivers and administrators and school board members and parents. That's awesome. And I think that, you know, it's like the rating hasn't stopped us in the States, because people have brought their own thoughtful analysis to the film, and that's been very rewarding. I think that we became part of the wallpaper way more quickly than I ever thought we would in this school, in East Middle School. We introduced ourselves to the student body. First we introduced ourselves to the faculty. We said we were making a film about bullying, and then we'd be in the hallways in the school throughout the year. But I have to tell you, like, our production was sometimes just me with a tiny camera. Sometimes it was me and my producer kind of helping out. But we were so small, we were utterly inconsequential, and I don't think that we added up to a whole lot more than the security cameras that were everywhere in the building. Every bus in that district had, I think, 2 cameras on it. They were warned about the cameras on the bus. So I think that it didn't play a role. And Alex has spoken to this question and said that it was the same whether I was there or not for him on the bus. I think it was actually probably worse. You know, I certainly hope that it didn't impact it in that way. Everything that I could tell and feel was that the kids had, like, utterly couldn't give a crap about whether I was there or not. And I think the other thing that was happening was that, unfortunately, the climate was such in Alex's school where those kids felt that they had license to bully Alex, and that they'd been doing it for so long with little consequence to no consequence, that was part of what was happening as well, is that they were used to adults seeing it and not intervening. And that's what was happening from everything I feel and felt and have thought since that day. Thank you for your question. All the time. I'm more hopeful than anything else right now. I think that the narrative has been tragedy for the last 2 years, and I think people are stepping up and people are sick of it, and I think a lot of this generation is saying, we don't want this to be our story anymore. We can actually step up. We can be the generation that turns the tide on this, and I have a lot of hope, and I see leadership everywhere, in all quarters, and it's so inspiring. And to the extent that this film and other initiatives can be part of that conversation, it's fantastic. But I really believe that this is the moment where, like other ills in our society that we've sort of laid slowly to rest, that this is the moment for bullying, and the turning point is now.
And I think what's so great about your film is that for schools that are larger than your school, where you can't have a full school circle, or like my school where they don't have the resources to have a full school assembly and talk about issues like suicide, this film, even if it's aired in one classroom, could make such a difference, because it's a tool that is going to start that conversation. And when parents see it, they're like, my mom had no clue I got bullied, and then all the media came out about our assembly, and she's like, why did I never tell her? I didn't think to tell my mom because I didn't know what she could do. So I think a film like yours, which I think is fantastic and powerful, is going to give teachers, parents, and students the idea that they need to talk about it and that it needs to start a conversation. And I think it's what this film is a conversation starter, which is going to cause a movement and create change, which we seriously need.
You're here.
I don't want to keep